And oh my goodness, and we are live. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day to everyone out there. I hope y'all are feeling well. I hope you are filled with good energy, great spirits. I know I definitely am, and I will be sharing that with our special guest today, Shari. I am super excited to have you on. Hello, and how are you so far?
I am good today. The allergies have left me alone for a little bit, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay, that's always nice to hear. I usually don't get allergies unless I'm visiting my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. Again, that's how you know I said it right. Sounds like my mouth is
Yeah.
full, but it is Louisville in comparison to what DeAngelo says, which is Louisville. But anywho, but yeah, I'm usually feeling really good. No allergies in Portland. So, are you in Portland?
Wow. Yes, Portland
Okay.
is a killer. We're in a bowl, so we get we have grass farms for those who may be interested in Oregon, and all of the pollen from the grass farms comes here and sits in this valley we're in. It's brutal.
Mm.
So you just may not be allergic to grass pollen, which lucky you.
Goodness gracious. Well, bless your heart. I'm glad you're feeling well today as far as allergies are concerned. But for everyone else out there, hello, every beautiful body out there. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Blair G. Hervey. I am the founder and CEO of The Corporate Strategist. Usually, I would be joined by my colorful co host, my bestie and soul friend of 20 plus years. But today, he is facilitating a very important session for his 9 to 5. But we are going to, of course, share a very big welcome to our guest, Shari Dunn. Again, we are so excited to have you. D'Angelo usually loves to start what I refer to as, or start with what I refer to as a sunny segment. And it's just taking a moment to truly focus on the people that are in your space and ask them
Mhm.
not only how they're doing, but to really check in with them authentically. We like to demonstrate it here just to, again, give our leaders out there, corporate folks, whoever is out there, just a reminder to truly check in with people by asking, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And D'Angelo
Okay.
always says, how is your head? How is your heart? So, how are you doing? How are you feeling today, Shari? Aside from
Um,
allergies.
yeah, aside from allergies and the fact that I thought my Zoom was taken over, which we got that worked out. But what it really tells you is how easily we can spin out, right? And
Mhm.
emotionally, how a small thing can really jangle your nerves for the rest of your day.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like I need to calm it back down and I need to, get back on track and kind of be like, yes, I now have access to my Zoom. It's okay. But generally, I'm feeling really excited because there's so many exciting things and just a teeny bit overwhelmed because I was thinking today, man, I could use a personal assistant.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what, do you have a personal assistant?
I don't. I have an admin who is amazing. My
Oh,
admin, Michelle, and I have been working together for the last 3 years. I got so incredibly lucky when I met her, and she helps me with so many things. But I realized that there's this other piece of life where things come up and I have to go down a rabbit hole for an hour or 2 hours. Why is Xfinity glitchy? Blah blah blah,
oh,
which takes up a tremendous amount of my emotional and thought time.
yeah.
So
I feel you. And then it's almost just like, oh, I just want to start over. Well,
yeah,
shout out to our assistants out there for sure. Ashley Ray Webb makes my life a lot lighter, even all the way from Louisville, Kentucky, and virtually. So moments like that, I'm like, hey, girl, can you call? Can you figure this out? So I
yeah.
can hyper focus, but I feel you, Sherry. Well,
Mhm.
as I said, y'all, I'm doing fantastic. I'm feeling very well. Still here in San Francisco at the Ascent Conference for day 2. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to connect with Karen Mangia, who I not did some work with, but had an opportunity to connect with before at Salesforce. So shout out to her and thank you for her time and reaching out to me as well. But today we are talking with Shari Dunn. So if you are not familiar with this woman, I think you are one of the first women that I heard about in the city when I moved to Portland, Oregon about 5 years ago. Just doing some fabulous work in the community. But just a little background, she is a DEI trainer, writer, attorney, and consultant for the ITBOM LLC, or company of her own. And what does that stand for one more time?
Yeah, ITBOM stands for I'm the boss of me.
I love it. I love it. She's the CEO of her life. She's the attorney, author, educator, keynote news anchor, CEO, professor, thinker, change agent, and game show winner. Sherry is an innovator, educator, and thinker, helping organizations and individuals to change their thinking and change their lives and organizations. And I really love that. Now I've got to ask you, what game show did you win?
So I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire daytime edition. I did not win the million, but I am listed as a high earner, high winner on that show. I used to be really good at trivia when I could remember things.
Oh, that is fantastic. Now, do you remember which question tripped you up?
Oh, of course. It was a question about a musical, and the answer was Oklahoma, which I
Oh,
actually knew. And on the subway, I lived in New York at the time, and on the subway ride home, I was going, Oklahoma. so, so mad. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah. But I still did really well to get listed as a, one of the
that's
high
awesome.
earners. So.
Congratulations, congratulations. Well, I promise I won't ask you any questions that'll trip you up to that extent today. Today, we're talking actually about the war on woke and how the war on
Yeah.
woke is the war on inclusion. And I love that title. And you brought
Mhm.
that to the TBDC desk today. Tell us a little bit why you felt like it was really critical to bring this particular topic to light.
Yeah, so as you may know, I wrote a blog post about it that you can find on Medium called The War on Woke is a war on empathy, and it's working.
Mm,
And the reason I wrote that is because I was seeing all of this language about woke this, woke that, and I wasn't seeing any counter narrative. Even people who believe in justice and equity, they kind of slid into that woke language. And I was thinking, wait a minute, wait a minute. This is a reframing about something that is very critical, which is how do we get to an empathetic understanding of each other? And I recognize, and many people recognize, that when people use woke or wokeism, they really are using that to be a marker or a dog whistle or a fill in for Black, Hispanic, LGBTQI, anything related to understanding other people's perspectives and their positioning in the world is woke and therefore dismissed.
huh.
And you have an entire state run by someone who wants to be the president, which is horrifying,
Right.
who is actively leading a war against empathy.
Oh, that is well said. That is definitely well said. And I love that we're really diving into this topic today because you're right. It's capturing headlines and it's really impacting everyone's lives. And this war on woke and the recent legislation passed in Florida is really causing a dynamic battle in
Mhm.
ideologies and social awareness and thinking about inclusivity. And what I love to think about, particularly in our world of DEI and education, it's impacting what we can say, what we can't say, how we can educate, and how people can learn. So talk to me about, how we as DEI practitioners, trainers, educators can navigate this new world.
Right. Well, one thing we have to do as trainers is not shirk from woke, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things I say to people sometimes is I know there's a lot of pejorative discussion about being woke. And I will follow up and say, but I ask you, you should wonder who wants you to be asleep.
Huh.
The
Right.
questions that we really have to address are what value is it in for other people for you to be asleep or ignoring or not aware of or not sensitive to other people's issues and dynamics. Like that's the question.
Yep.
Who wants you? Why do they want you to be asleep? And so that's one thing I talk to people about. And the other thing is I try to bring that empathy analogy into the space to counteract the negative discussions and say, look, empathetic understanding, which is different from sympathy, right? Empathetic understanding asks us to put ourselves in another person's shoes and try to feel through what that feels like. That is a cornerstone of human relationships. Absent empathy, we got a problem. I mean, we things are going to really go south. So I try to build an analogy for people so they can feel confident. I've had some white folks say to me, well, I don't want to say woke because it makes me seem woke. It makes me seem like I'm, holier than thou. And I said, well, that's letting other people control the narrative. And I said, it's not so much that you have to walk around and say you're woke, but you do need to push back when people are using woke to anti-Black, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQIA rhetoric. You can't just let that lie, right? That's not, and so really helping people understand what's happening around them and how they can, in their work or in their conversations, push back with some positionality.
I like that, and I think that this is a theme that comes up all the time. no matter what we're talking about, particularly as it pertains to allyship or accomplishship or advocacy. Folks are either afraid to speak up, they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, and then of course they're being complicit leads to some type of harm or some type of violence. And so how would you encourage these folks, whomever it may be, whether it's our Black allies or non-Black allies, how would you encourage them to advocate for wokeness in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is, and I always say this to people, there are very few arenas in our lives where we expect everything to go perfectly with no pushback. Like we don't expect that from anything else. But when it comes to discussions around race or gender or difference, any pushback it's over. And like that's weird, right? Like we don't expect that from anything else. So go into everything knowing that, things may work, they may not. That's okay. That's the nature of learning, of growing. Don't let, pushback discourage you. And again, I'm not saying that people should walk around going woke this, woke that. But what I am saying is that people should be able to push back on a narrative where it's very clear to you that wokeness is being used to degrade and divide and minimize other people's experience. And what you could say is, hey, for me, that sounds like empathetic understanding. And why are you against that? Oops, sorry about that. And, why are you against that empathetic understanding? Like, that's something you could ask. That's a tool you could use of trying to, as an ally. And again, don't be bullied or cowed if you come into space and you say, hey, I don't like that. And people accuse you of being woke. Say, well, you know what? I understand that means something to you, but that pejorative does not change what I'm saying about empathy, right?
Yeah.
Don't let people throw you off your game around what you believe and what you understand just because they're accusing you of being woke. And, I would say, well, if you choose to be asleep, that's great. But
Yeah.
I am interested in being awake to the problems and issues that are impacting people in our business and in our company.
And that makes perfect sense. And I like how you just reframed what it is. So instead of giving it some type of negative energy or negative connotation, and then it becoming a combative moment,
Mhm.
you're saying that, that's your choice, but what I choose is, and then you're using different language. And so
Mhm.
it's not about who's better or who's this or who's that. It's more about who's focused on solutions and focused on this E word that I absolutely love, which is absolute empathy.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then when you think about that too, not being woke creates these spaces of exclusion. So,
Right.
how do you share that with folks that you're working with or trying to link arms with? How do you create or how do you illustrate that picture for them?
Right. I mean, this fear of running away from wokeness can have a very detrimental impact. We are seeing that, right, in schools, in workplaces, and potentially end up creating hostile work environment for people.
Mhm.
So on the one hand, people are concerned, oh, being woke is making our employees uncomfortable. Well, this anti-woke movement
Mhm.
could actually open your company up to a hostile work environment claim. Because what we are finding is that in these anti-woke states and spaces, people are taking this as a license to harass, cajole, threaten, minimize people of color they're just being anti-woke. Well, there's still laws, right? And so, this is the problem. This just came up today with the poet Amanda Gorman, who spoke at
Inauguration.
the inauguration, and her poem being removed from a school because one person complained. One person. And now I do not know if this is
Wow.
fact, but there are allegations that the person who complained may be aligned with a white supremacist organization.
Wow.
So how do we know if this anti-woke is opening the door for other pretty nefarious activities? And I do think this is another school district, maybe in Florida also, that is suing for creating a hostile environment for Black students and LGBTQIA students. That this removal of books about Black history and LGBTQI experience has opened the door for those students to be harassed and minimized by other students in the school. So I think you have to point out to people like, look, what are you talking about when you say anti-woke? Do you mean getting rid of and marginalizing people of color? Do you mean telling them their experiences don't matter? what are you saying? Like really playing that out, and then saying, like, some of those things you would be doing would be running afoul of existing employment law, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
there's some issues there that I think people are just getting really tripped up on, right? By being this wave of bullying with the language is getting people to do things that conversely are going to have other consequences.
You're absolutely right. Being woke can be very exhausting as well. You hear a lot of people saying, "You so woke, you need to take a nap," right?
Mhm.
So talk to us about different ways you and we all can continue to re-energize ourselves in this work.
Yeah, that is a tricky one because empathetic understanding can be exhausting, right?
Mhm.
When you truly open yourself to other people's experience and you understand that people are suffering and you do feel that, that's tiring, right? That's a lot. That carries a lot. And so finding ways to see seeing wins, and really letting those wins, things that are working, really fill you up as
Yeah.
much as the pain, like letting the joy and promoting joy, right? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about Black joy, and how we need to see more of it and how we need to lean more into it. And Black folks have this incredible ability, from my perspective, where we can find joy and laughter in some of the most difficult, complicated situations, because that's been our lot. And so we don't always look at things and just only say, oh, it's all terrible. Sometimes we do find humor. So finding humor in things, and then of course taking time to de-stress and focus on things that you enjoy. If that's just vegging out in front of Netflix, that's fine too. You know what I mean? Like just finding ways to shut off your mind sometimes, where you can relax. If it's meditation, if it's exercise, everybody's thing is different. I don't want to say like, oh, exercise, maybe you don't like that, or maybe you don't like meditation. Everybody has a different thing. But whatever the thing is that gets you out of your head and gets you into a relaxation state, do that, and try to find ways to do that, if not daily, at least weekly.
I like that. Get out of your head and get more in tune with your body is very important, because then that allows you to extend empathy to yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
just to remind yourself, like, this is what you need. And if you need this, then there are other people out there, I'm sure, that need something similar. I love what you said too about celebrating your wins. There was a podcast I listened to most recently, and the gentleman said something about, putting, uh, celebrate your wins in an alarm. And so every day, I think he said at 12 p.m., because he works from home, him and his family, he'll get his daughter, he'll grab his wife, and they actually, celebrate a win. They'll do a little dance or whatever the case may be together. And I thought that was so important. And I put it on my calendar too, because if it ain't on my calendar, Sherry, it's not happening.
Yeah,
But
look, if it's not on my calendar, it don't exist, including me. If I'm not on my calendar, I don't exist. I don't, the work, the whatever I'm supposed to be doing is done. I love that idea.
Mhm.
And the other thing I do, and I forgot this, but and I do it as much as I can, is gratitude.
Nice.
Either gratitude meditation or gratitude journaling, or even just out loud. Reminding yourself what you're grateful for, is a really good antidote to just feeling like, oh, I can't make it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. We have to
Mhm.
definitely schedule time for ourselves for sure. I think he said, oh, I was looking for the quote. He said something about, if you don't schedule time for your wins, then your defeat will make time for you, or something like that. Like,
Mhm.
the losses are coming to get you. And if they're coming,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
You're gonna take some L's. So if you don't schedule those wins, then you're not gonna make time for it or have time for it
Right.
at all. So I love that. So when it comes to, let's get back to, this wokeness and this woke topic. What are three things that really show up in workplaces as quote unquote anti-work, anti-woke, and what can organizations be doing to overcome that?
Yeah. So number one is when regarding trainings about understanding DEI trainings in general, companies are starting to get pushback that people don't want to participate in woke activities.
Hmm.
Well, what I would say is that companies have all kinds of trainings, right? You have safety trainings, You have trainings that you have to take to work at a company, right? You can't just say, you know what, I want to opt out of safety training.
Exactly.
You know, so I think companies have to say, look, these trainings, and they should make sure the trainings are doing this, but are designed to make sure we have a workplace where we understand and support each other. And they're just like any other trainings, right? So I think you have to take the idea that DEI work is somehow inherently political out of the equation, that it is a continuous improvement best practice for your business.
Exactly.
So, and then the other way it's showing up is when we look at hiring. You know, people are saying, well, I don't want to, you know, hire unqualified people. Well, first of all, you know, there's so much to unpack there, right? The fact that people of color are inherently unqualified by being people of color, or that positions inherently belong to white people. I mean, that's really kind of the bottom line there. And that I'm going to give this to some unqualified person. It's weird language, and really shifting that to say, look, this is about having a robust, diverse workplace where ideas that we need to succeed as a company and win the future, what quite frankly is going to be a more diverse future and is already a more diverse world, that we need to be successful in our business. And so, you know, this is not about whatever you think it's about. And we as a business have a right to diversify our workforce. That's the right you have. So really shifting that narrative. And then I think the third thing is making sure that the people who you have who are practicing this work do know what they're doing. I mean, there is some issues, right? Like my background, I was a lawyer by profession. I've worked in news and media. You know, I bring a lot of cross-disciplinary skills to this. And so I have a pretty good sense of things that are illegal, legal, and what you can do. And I think employers sometimes are just turning it over. I mean, so you have two problems. You have people who are micromanaging the work, but then you have people who aren't overseeing at all. And I do think making sure that you're working with people who know what they're doing, know the boundary lines of the law. Like there are legal things you can and cannot do, right? And who understand the work and aren't going to do more harm than good. I think those are the three things that I would say from a business perspective that people need to push back on, need to stand firm on, and need to bring some thought to, right?
Yeah. That's well said. You know, and you brought up some things that I was actually speaking to a DEI leader last week. I speak to all of us so often, you know, I get everybody mixed up. But I remember she said something about, you know, there are folks that are doing this work that shouldn't be doing this work. And I agree with that. I do understand that. It sounded a little gatekeepy as well. But if you are an organization out there and DEI hasn't been something that you have been focused on or that you all have experience in, what would be your recommendation to an organization to say, hey, these are the things you should be looking for in a DEI practitioner, and or these are some outcomes or metrics that you should be focused on as well?
Well, I take your point about the gatekeeping because I worry about that, right? I don't want the practice and the work to become all, you know, Cornell certificate, which I don't mean to be mean about, but I'm just saying, like, I don't want it to just be that, right? Like that's a little weird. And I don't want it to only be, you know, this person or this type of person. I also agree with that. However, that being said, people shouldn't be practicing law without a license. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't be practicing things you don't know. So I don't do confrontation therapy, DEI. I am not a licensed therapist, right? I do not have the tools or the ability to come into a space, get people all angry and have them pull their emotions and then knit them back together. That's actually a job, right? With skills. So I try not to practice outside of my lane or my ability, right? And so that is what you're looking for. And so I would say trying to find out what is the philosophy of the person. You know, I always tell people, I don't have any problem with burning things down, but I approach it, I'm going to exit everybody from the building. I'm going to move them to the side of the street. Then we're going to burn it all down. Then we're going to build it together, right? I'm not going to burn it with you in it.
Right.
And there are people who are burning structures with people in them, And so I think you want to know the philosophy of the person. How do they approach conflict? What are their plans? How do they address things when things go wrong? What is their background? Their background could be a whole host of things. People from social services, people from therapy backgrounds, people who have great lived experience and who have worked. Like there's all kinds of things, but really understand that and have a cooperative relationship with the person. And if there are going to be, and find out like what are the sessions going to be made up of? How are these things going to work so that you're not surprised? You know what I
Right.
mean? This issue just came up the other day with the Uber diversity
Yep.
chief.
We talked about that yesterday.
And it's like, okay, so I have some suspicions about where that came from potentially internal pressure to do the other side.
Mhm.
And you need a practitioner who's strong enough to say, this is not an other siding, right?
Mhm.
That is not, and you have to respect that. I recognize though it's harder for people in-house. In-house is as an outside consultant, I'm the boss of me, literally, is the title. And so it's different. I push back in different ways. I think it is a tricky thing for people in-house to navigate, but I think they still do have to have the wherewithal to say like, this would be a problem for these reasons. And I don't agree with this or suggest this. Now, if a company forges ahead with something you don't suggest, I mean, all you can do is go on the record and say, yeah, I did not think that was a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. That's come up for me definitely in my DEI journey, particularly as a business owner over the past 3 years. I learned that anti-racism or talking to white people about their racism, those were not topics that I was not an expert in, and that I would not choose to have conversations about because it was triggering for me. That would be one. The other is trauma-informed work. There are so many people out there, like you said, that specialize in that work. Organizations should really leverage experts in that space. And then the other thing that you said, making sure that you're asking these questions about philosophy in advance. What is your approach? What are the learning objectives? I think those are very critical for organizations out there as well.
Yeah. How do you handle conflict when it inevitably arises? What's your protocol for that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the content? Yeah, we talked about Bo. I think it's Bo Lee Young
Yes.
yesterday. So
Uh-huh.
hopefully she'll come on the show. We'd love to hear her.
That would be great. I mean, I'm sure, from her perspective, but again, we get into moral relativism and both sidism, which is a bit of a problem, right? Because that's back to woke. It's a way of stealing the narrative away from the main issue, which is hundreds of years of exclusion in the case of African Americans from the modern life of the United States and workplace. I mean, we are 55 years into legal freedom, right? The last major legislation from Jim Crow was 1968, I think, Housing Civil Rights Act. So that's 55 years ago. So prior to that, there was either physical slavery or Jim Crow, which in my opinion was legal slavery, right? So we're only 55 years into freedom. So you can't put that up against Karen's feel bad about Karen's name, right? So understanding scale of the work is super important. So I think that's, and that's how much scholarship do you have too? And what are you doing? What do you really know, about the work? And that's why I say things like certificate programs and stuff like that. And again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm saying those are great, but that's not scholarship. Scholarship is really knowing the nuances of this, the history, the past, the present, the future, knowing all of that should potentially have gotten her maybe to a different answer about that.
Yeah, so like you said, that's education, and there's an unconventional path, which anything about me, I love a good unconventional path, but that paired with lived experience, application, and results, as well as values. I think that's one thing that we didn't mention. If you want to make sure that your company is headed in the right direction by hiring a specific DI practitioner or taking on a certain subject matter, make sure that it's in alignment with your values, your charter, and where you're saying DEI or this particular focus on DEI topics is going to take your organization. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and also be willing to have the people work with top leadership.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Shari, I think we gave some of these people out here some good nuggets of great knowledge. You shared a ton of information and I greatly appreciate it. 30 minutes goes by very quickly.
Yes, it
So I
does.
appreciate it. See, look, my alarm's going off too. And it wasn't to celebrate your wins, but it was an alarm nonetheless.
Well,
I
this is a win because you did another, another session. So that actually is celebrating your win. Every 30 minutes you complete.
I love that. See, now every time this alarm goes off, I'm going to remember that that is the alarm for that. Because I think at this point, we have gone on 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, almost 50 episodes.
So that's a win.
That's a win. So a win is a win. We'll take it. All right. Well, we don't have any time for rapid fire questions today, but I do want to make sure that I send a shout out to someone in the audience or someone out there. Her name is Jocelyn Rice. She's actually the founder of Black Earth United. She was also a fellow pitcher. So we pitched together on the stage for Pitch Black. But she most recently released a montage of videos entitled Reflecting on the Past, Envisioning the Future, 3 years since George Floyd's murder. And it was all set in nature. And what it really displayed was vulnerability, humanness, and the fact that choosing to go to sleep on these issues are not an option. So definitely stay woke. And also a shout out to Faith. She's the founder of Woke PDX. And in that space, they actually have a series of community conversations built for the culture. So make sure that you reach out to those folks. Y'all make sure that you tune in every single day at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for your daily dose of D&B with usually D&B for the Black DEIBA Collective. Thank you again, Shari. You have a wonderful day. Everyone have a great week.
You're welcome.